This is a playlist and a video in which we take all sorts of grammatical and conversational concepts and skills and use them all together within a flowing context to practice them all together in a realistic situation. So, if you need more focused studying into each concept or skill, you can watch individual videos made for each of them. So, as always, A and B will be having a conversation to provide us with material. A is going to ask B a question and start the conversation. A is going to ask B, would you like to watch something scary? Okay. Okay, so it seems like A and B are having a movie night. So A is suggesting, would you like to watch something scary? A is asking, would you like to watch something scary? Now, in this case, first of all, let's take a look into how grammatically we will say something along the lines of something adjective. For example, when you want to say something like something spicy, something sweet, something cool, something cold, something along those lines. So, in this case, if you want to say something plus adjective, keep three things in mind. Number one, first, we're going to conjugate, in other words, inflect the display form of the adjective scary into its attributive adjective form. So we have to first change the adjective into its attributive adjective form. So what is an attributive adjective? Now, when it comes to adjectives, in large, there are two types. There is a predicative adjective, and there is an attributive adjective. Okay, so grammatically and functionally, let's take a look into the difference between the two. So, first of all, a predicative adjective is, for example, something like scary in this case. In other words, when an adjective is modifying a noun that comes before it, in this case, it is modifying the pronoun this. So, when an adjective is modifying a noun that comes before it, this, what is scary? This is scary. So, scary is modifying this, a noun that comes before it. In that case, the adjective scary is being used as a predicative adjective. On the other hand, I can use the same adjective scary, but as an attributive adjective as well. For example, if I say, this is a scary movie. Now in this case, the adjective scary is modifying a noun that comes behind it. What is scary? The movie is scary. So in that sense, in this case, scary is modifying a noun that comes behind it. In other words, it's an attributive adjective. So in Korean, when you want to say something plus adjective, first you have to change the adjective into its attributive adjective form. Because in Korean, depending on whether you are going to use an adjective as a predicative adjective or an attributive adjective, it will look different in each case. Okay, so first let's take a look at how we will change the adjective into its attributive adjective form. Okay, so first let's place the display form of the adjective scary. Now, what is a display form? A display form is a form of a verb or adjective that ends with ta at the end. Now, if it ends with ta, if the ending is ta, it means that you are looking at the base form, in other words, what I call the display form. So, why do I call it display form? Well, literally because it is only used to be displayed on the dictionary and it is not meant for actual usage. So, we will always take a display form, simply just use it as a starting point so that we can start here, apply a certain rule, apply a certain set of rules so that we can eventually change it, in other words, conjugate or inflect it into some kind of an actual form. In other words, so that we can change the ending ta into some kind of an actual ending. So, in order to do so, when we want to change the ending ta into some kind of an actual ending, now it's not that simple. It doesn't mean that you can literally just erase ta and then immediately replace it with some kind of an actual ending, because in the process there are a lot of variables. So you have to learn and apply a couple of sets of rules. So I call each set of rule conjugation route number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. However, 3, 4, and 5 is not the priority. Number 1 and 2 will give you enough understanding to help you be able to navigate yourself in most conversational situations. So first, we're going to focus on conjugation route number 1 and 2. So once again, conjugation route number 1 and 2 are each set of rules that you can use, that you can apply, so that you can take a display form of a verb or adjective and eventually change it into some kind of an actual form, according to your purpose. Once again, conjugating, in other words, inflecting a display form into an actual form, can also be called a process of changing the ending ta into some kind of a different actual ending. So, if that's the case, the ending that I want to use eventually is the deciding factor that will decide whether I should apply conjugation route number 1 or conjugation route number 2. In other words, inflection route number 1 or 2. So, they are different sets of rules, and the deciding factor, the arbiter that decides which one I should apply, is always the ending that I want to use. I'm not going to use the ending ta, but I am going to change it into some kind of an actual ending. So that ending that I want to use is the deciding factor. Some endings belong to conjugation route number 1, some to conjugation route number 2. So the ending for attributive adjective belongs to conjugation route number 2. So let's take a look into how we will conjugate, in other words, inflect the display form of the adjective scary into an actual form, in this case, attributive adjective form. So the ending for attributive adjective is very short. It's just one consonant, N. So, since this ending belongs to conjugation route number 2, we will have to apply the rules of conjugation route number 2. And the rules are, if you have a display form of an adjective that ends with the B consonant once ta is erased. Now once again, if you have a display form of an adjective that ends with the B consonant once ta is erased, in this case, for the most part, there are four exceptions of adjectives. However, for the most part, you will apply this four-step formula. Step number 1, erase 다. Step number 2, we're going to erase the be as well. Step number 3, we're going to place something that I call an irregular middle section. And the irregular middle section in this case will look like 우. Okay, so what is an irregular middle section? Well, let's take a look at step number 1, 2, 3. Step number 1, I'm going to erase 다. Step number 2, I'm going to erase the be as well. And then, now, I am starting with the display form. And I eventually want to get to this ending. But in most cases, there is something in the middle, in between, that looks quite irregular and random, and sometimes even chaotic. But don't worry, that's why we are studying, learning, and applying these two sets of rules. So even though at first it looks completely irregular, random, and chaotic, once you understand all the aspects of conjugation route number 1 and 2, you will be able to navigate yourself through the irregular middle section so that you can start with a display form, get through the irregular middle section, and then eventually get to the ending that you want to use. The reason why it's called irregular, well, of course, literally, because it's irregular. Sometimes it will look like this, sometimes it will look different. So that's why I call conjugation route number 1 and 2 not a rule, respectively. They are each sets of rules. So you have to know all the aspects, all the variables in each set of rules. So that's how you know when the irregular middle section looks like this, when it looks different, and why. Okay, so according to step number 3, we're going to place 우 as the irregular middle section, and then step number 4, now we can finally attach the ending, in other words, the conjugation form, the inflection form that you want to use. So in this case, N. So if I say 무서운, now we no longer have the display form of the adjective scary that I can't use. Now I have an actual form that I can use, in this case, the attributive adjective form. So altogether, 무서운. Okay, so this is what we will use. So you can once again see the difference between the display form and actual forms. Okay, so first we're going to place 무서운, scary, but in its attributive adjective form. So this is step number 1. I said you have to know 3 things. You have to keep in mind 3 things when you want to say something plus adjective, right? So that's number 1. Conjugate, inflect the display form of the adjective into its attributive adjective form, and then behind it, step number 2, behind it, place something that will grammatically play the role of something. So, 거, within the language of Korean, functionally speaking, grammatically speaking, it plays a variety of roles. Now in this case, when you want to say something plus adjective, it can also play the role of something. So, step number 1, conjugate, inflect the adjective into its attributive adjective form, and then place it first, and then behind it, 거, place something that is the equivalent of something. So altogether we have 무서운 거, something scary. The third thing that you have to keep in mind is that grammatically, fundamentally speaking, it's not that the pronoun something is becoming a part of the adjective scary, it's the other way around. the adjective scary is becoming a part of the pronoun something. So, what do I mean by that exactly, functionally speaking? So, if the pronoun something within a sentence is the object, for example, then scary stays together and together stays goes into the object position. If something is the subject, for example, then it's the same case scenario. Scary will stay together and follow something and follow it into the same position. In that case, the subject position. In this case, we have a verb, watch, and always the target of some kind of a verb, in other words, some kind of an action, is the object. So, what is the target of the act of watching? What are we going to watch? We are going to watch something scary. So therefore, in this case, it's the object. And once again, if something is the object, the adjective behind it will follow it into the same grammatical position. Okay, so we have something scary as the object. And actually, I am not going to look at would and like to and watch as 4 separate components. I'm not going to look at it like that. I'm going to look at all of them as one verb. Because just like I inflected the adjective scary, I'm going to conjugate the verb watch into a version that includes would like to at the same time. In other words, I will figure out a way to attach an ending to the verb watch, an ending that is grammatically the equivalent of would like to in Korean. Okay, and in the middle, I am not going to place anything that is the equivalent of you in the Korean sentence because in Korean, if anything is too obvious according to the context, it has to be omitted. So, if I'm referring to someone or calling someone you, it means that I am directly looking at you or you are the only one that I'm talking to. So 99.9999% of the time, you is going to be something that is too obvious according to the context, therefore will be omitted. So, in that sense, we have one big verb and we have one big object. Okay, so of course in Korean we're going to start with the object and then move on to the verb. So first, let's say something scary, and we know how to say that, right? We're going to say 무서운 as scary, but in its attributive adjective form. And then 거, so that it can grammatically play the role of something. In this case, when you want to say something adjective. Okay, and then now let's figure out how to say would like to with a verb behind it. Okay, so in Korean, of course, would like to will be an ending, so it will go behind the verb. So, as always, let's first place the display form of the verb that we're using, watch in this case. So the display form of the verb watch is 보다, and of course it ends with 다 at the end. That's what makes it a display form. So, it tells me that I cannot use it as it is. I can only use it as a starting point so that I can apply some kind of a formula to it, some kind of a set of rules to it, so that I can eventually change it, conjugate it, inflect it into some kind of an actual form. In this case, I want to use the would like to form. So I'm going to take an ending that can play the role of would like to, and I'm going to attach it to 보다, which is the display form of watch. But of course, I cannot just immediately do it. First of all, I have to take away 다, and then now let's figure out how we can attach the new ending. So, once again, am I going to apply the rules of conjugation route number 1 or 2 that depends to the ending that I'm going to use? In this case, would like to. So, would like to also belongs to conjugation route number 2. Okay, the ending for would like to is 레요, 레요, and it also belongs to conjugation route number 2. So, in order to have it really be attached to some kind of a verb and actually be used, let's apply the rules within conjugation route number 2. And the rules are, if you have a display form that ends with a vowel, any kind of a vowel, once ta is erased, in that case, we are looking at a very convenient situation. If a display form ends with any kind of a vowel, once ta is erased, there is no irregular middle section within conjugation route number 2. So those are the rules within conjugation route number 2. The reason why we are applying the rules of conjugation route number 2 instead of 1, once again, is because the ending that I want to use belongs to conjugation route number 2. So I can immediately attach it. How convenient is that? Okay, so altogether now we have 볼래요, 볼래요, 볼래요. And now it's no longer just watch, now it's would like to watch. So that's why the version of watch that we will use will look almost nothing like its display form. A version that includes an ending that is, grammatically speaking, the equivalent of, functionally speaking, the equivalent of would like to. So, 볼래요, would like to. Would like to watch. Okay, however, if I just say this as it is, now it becomes a statement. It becomes a declarative sentence. It becomes, I would like to watch something scary. So, the best way to change a statement into a question in Korean, ironically speaking, is to not change anything. Just raise your tone at the very last syllable when speaking and place a question mark when writing or texting. So, altogether, if A says 무서운 거 볼래요? 무서운 거 볼래요? 무서운 거 볼래요? Then that would be the equivalent of A asking B, would you like to watch something scary? In English. This time, B, to answer this question, will say, I want to watch something funny. So, once again, we're saying something plus adjective, and we already know how to do it, right? We are first going to conjugate the display form of the adjective funny into its attributive adjective form. And in order to do so, we have to apply the rules of conjugation route number 2, inflection route number 2. So, the display form of funny, the adjective funny, would be 웃기다, 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 웃기다. Okay, so Now, in this case, you can see that it's also a display form that ends with a vowel once ta is erased. So in this case, once again, it is a very convenient situation, right? Because the ending for attributive adjective form is simply one consonant N, and within conjugation route number 2, the rules are if a display form ends with a vowel, any kind of a vowel, you can immediately attach the ending that you want to use. So altogether, if I say 웃긴, 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 now I have the adjective funny, but in its attributive adjective form. So this is what I will use to say something funny. And also, like the previous sentence, like in the previous sentence, something funny is going to be the object because it's a target of a verb, an action. What are we going to watch? Something funny. So in that sense, it's going to be the object, and once again, the adjective funny is going to follow something and stay together, and they will both go into the same grammatical position. In this case, the object position. Okay, so we're going to first start with the object, something funny. Just like we did before, we're going to place the attributive adjective form of funny, and then behind it we're going to place call so that it can functionally play the role of something in this case. So now we have something funny, 웃긴 거, 웃긴 거, and then now actually I will not want to watch as 3 separate components. I'm going to look at them as one verb because just like I conjugated, inflected the adjective funny into some kind of a different form, some kind of an actual form, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to conjugate the verb watch into a version that includes want to at the same time. In other words, I will attach the ending, an ending that is grammatically the equivalent of want to the verb watch. So let's first place the display form of watch once again. 보다. So we have a display form. Okay, so we've talked about the fact that depending on the ending that we're using, we have to either apply the rules of conjugation route number 1 or 2. Now, why do we do that? Because, once again, there is a lot of times, well actually most of the times, something irregular in the middle between the display form and the ending that you want to eventually get to. So in order to navigate yourself through that irregular middle section, that's why you have to know, and that's why you have to apply a set of rules, conjugation route number 1 or 2, depending on which ending you're using. But there are some conjugation forms, some endings, in other words, that I call no-route conjugation forms. Now, why do I call them no-route conjugation forms? Well, literally because there is no route. Now, what do I mean by that? We talked about irregular middle section, right? So, if I want to get through the irregular middle section, I have to go on a certain route, a path. But what if there is no irregular middle section? Then there is no route or path because I'm not going anywhere. Because if there isn't anything in the middle, it means that I am immediately at the destination. So if there is no irregular middle section, there is no path, there is no route to go on. So there are certain endings conjugation forms that are no-route conjugations. And it means that regardless of situation, in all situations, no variables, no exceptions, some endings are always immediately attached to a display form once ta is erased. There isn't anything irregular in the middle. So want to would be a very typical example of a no-route conjugation. So when you want to use the ending that is grammatically the equivalent of want to, you don't have to look into what the display form looks like once ta is erased. There are no situations, there are no variables, there are no exceptions whatsoever. Always erase ta, immediately attach a no-route conjugation form, a no-route ending. And want to is 고 싶어요, and once again it's a very typical example of a no-route conjugation form, a no-route ending. So altogether now we have 보고 싶어요, 보고 싶어요, 보고 싶어요, which is no longer just watch. Now we have want to watch. So if B wants to say, I want to watch something funny, in that case the Korean sentence will look like 웃긴 거 보고 싶어요. 웃긴 거 보고 싶어요. 웃긴 거 보고 싶어요.